All right, we're here at FailFest 2014. I'm Aaron Sparks with Edge of the Web Radio. We're here with Matt Wyatt of Recovery Force. How are you doing, sir?
Very fine, sir.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad
Thanks
you're
for having me.
No problem. Thanks for spending some time with us. Now, you're here with this entire summit that we've got going on here,
Right.
talking about how to learn from failure. You were just on a panel with a number of other speakers, and can you share with us some of the key points that you came across to the audience about failure?
Sure. One is you have to embrace it. I believe it's inevitable. Don't be afraid of it. It's part of the process. And I think a lot of times people see that as such a negative word, but I see it as an iterative process, like I said. And to not believe when you go into starting your own company or whatever endeavor that you take on,
Right.
you don't have all the answers to everything. And so surround yourself with people that that are not necessarily like you, or do not have your core competencies, and can balance that playing field out to reduce the risk of failure.
Now, you said on the panel that the business that you start off with, it's not a direct line of sight of where you're going to be going. You're going to be going into hills and valleys all the way
Right.
through the existence. Can you share
Right.
some of your own experience of some of the pitfalls and that you have had in your own company?
Sure.
As well as what lessons learned from that experience.
Sure. I often say if my ultimate goal is to ultimately teach in college, university level someday, and I think if I was going to teach a class in leadership or entrepreneurialism, the first thing I would do on the whiteboard or blackboard or whatever it is draw a line all the way around the room basically, and show if this is where you start, how you get there is not this way, it's probably this way.
Absolutely.
And so for an example, in the current startup organization that we have right now, we went into this seeing that our wearable technology had an application specific to the medical profession,
Right.
and we're very focused on that. And what we've since realized is equal and maybe even larger markets are for the military, for the new warfighter, the new 2018 initiative that the military is doing for reducing the risk of muscle pain and fatigue for these men and women, as well as the endurance athlete, and so those that suffer from lactic acid buildup, of course, from high-level endurance, as well as
Right.
pre-recovery, so that there's no good options. People don't stretch enough, and people don't warm up enough, and so our technology kind of plays into a very niche that we hadn't thought about early on. We're really focused on recovery. We realized that, my goodness, there's probably an equal or larger market in the pre-recovery
Absolutely.
aspect of this.
So you know that you're not going to most likely you're not going to get where you started out from,
Right.
but the lessons learned around a wrong turn can be maybe even more important than some right turns that you're going down.
Very, very good point, because, and then one of the gentlemen said on the panel, he said often most companies, they start out with a very clear focus initiative, and we have some very clear initiatives in our PPM that
Right.
we issued to investors.
Right.
But we've been able to maintain one piece of that, but you're right, the other they just go in different directions, and I think you as a leader, you've got to be open and available and willing to embrace those turns when you may think they're a wrong turn, when they turn into be a much greater opportunity.
Now you mentioned something as well, failing fast as opposed to failing slowly.
Right.
Completely appreciate the concept there, but
Right.
how do you go about failing fast? What do you put into motion that can give you more of a quick recon that this is the wrong direction to go? Are there processes that you adopt, or more maybe methodologies that you use?
I'd like to tell you I had a very clear algorithm for that. However,
Those things fail anyway.
right, that's true. The truth is, I think surrounding yourself with other opinion leaders and other people that you genuinely trust their knowledge and their intuition, if you will, to also evaluate, is this an iterative process on this what we think is a failure, or
Right.
is this really a dead end and we need to stop and go back the other way?
So you got to have that feedback as a culture,
Oh yeah, for sure.
and people that aren't maybe afraid to say, all right, put the hold on everything, this is the wrong way to go. You need to have that, and I've heard it before, having a foundation of trust. That's
Correct.
another common thread that we're hearing through all these different presenters, is that you have to be able to openly be transparent and see what's happening in your space, not people that are just punching the clock, and not yes people either. Right?
That's correct. One of the things that came up or one of the questions from the audience to the panel was a discussion on politics and how do politics affect an organization. And,
Right.
and in my opinion, they're toxic. There's no room for them. There's just it just cannot be.
Right.
And oftentimes that starts at the top of the leadership board. And
Sure.
And I use the old cliche of the fish rots from the head. So we as CEOs and as leaders of organizations have to realize that if those cultures are becoming, that becomes toxic in an organization, oftentimes that may have started at the top. So we need to be aware of that.
Absolutely. So it's also not only the failure concept and Learning Fest, but also keeping a lot of the headiness out of places where you shouldn't have to be as you're making decisions.
Right.
Religion, politics, those can be corruptors sometimes.
Oh yeah, they can. We try to embrace the philosophy of do the right thing and then do the next right thing. And I think most individuals intuitively know what to do, know what right thing to do, and then go do the next one.
Yep.
And we make things way more difficult than they really need to be most of the time, both in our personal and professional lives.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts for an entrepreneur that's getting started and maybe he's afraid to fail, or doesn't know what the future is going to hold for their organization or business? What would you give them as a guide point?
It's a very fair question. I think something that certainly has worked for me after having had a couple nice successful exits. I was very, very fortunate that things worked out the way they did. But in my most recent vetting process, if you will, I had to come up with a filter for different opportunities. And so most entrepreneurs have a whiteboard or somewhere where they write down all these opportunities.
Right.
And at one point I had 15 or 16, 17, whatever it was, on this board, and I could not get it narrowed down. And so I went through a process that I've really embraced of three words: purpose, passion, and prosperity. And so that was I would suggest to the audience that when you're looking at opportunities, make sure it's something that you're very passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be tough to really have your heart in it. It also needs to be purposeful to you, so whatever you define as purposeful. And then prosperity is important, whether it's capitalistic prosperity or whether there's other ways that you might define prosperity.
Sure.
But I think if you look at if you look at the opportunities and filter them through those three means,
Yep.
there's a good chance you'll increase your odds of a successful startup or a successful business venture.
And you'll be fulfilled as well in the process.
And you'll enjoy it and have fun with it. And
fantastic.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Mr.
My pleasure.
Wyatt. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.